We're here to talk today about a quick kind of overview of the Church Windows Accounts Receivable add-on in accounting. Before we get started on that, a few things. Click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your webinar control panel to minimize the webinar control panel. Gets it out of the way, particularly important if you're using a single monitor setup, or drag the webinar control panel off to your second desktop if you've got 2 or more monitors set up. Allows you to get the full visual effect of the presentation. We're thankful and grateful for all of you to attend today. There is no printed material for today's webinar event. The printed material we have for the accounts receivable in general is our training workbook, which you can purchase the accounts receivable training workbook from the Church Windows website if you wish, under the training workbooks. Otherwise, this is just a visual presentation today. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I will do my best to keep an eye on that. I'll see what I can't do to get those questions answered during the webinar presentation. If not, I'll certainly be happy to stick around and answer those after. We're here till about 12:50 Eastern Time. I'll try my best to keep it within that time frame. If you have to leave, we try to be respectful of your time, but if you have to cut out, just be aware, as always, we're recording this webinar event, so the video of it will be available on our website sometime here, probably within the next day or two, if not sooner. I simply ask that you do keep the questions on topic, meaning about the accounts receivable portion of Church Windows accounting. There may be another event that's better equipped to answer your questions, or you certainly, of course, may contact our technical support staff to answer other more specific questions you have about accounting or Church Windows in general, okay? All right, so let's jump in here. So in our accounting module, one of the very first things that's important to understand is that accounts receivable is not a part of the standard accounting install, okay? So if you just purchase Church Windows accounting, you don't have accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is an add-on. It has its own separate license key. It has to be enabled. So when you want to purchase or add on accounts receivable, you have to contact us and purchase that. Then we provide you a license key that allows you to enable that within accounting. Why is that, you ask? Okay. Well, primarily because we're dealing with Church Windows, church management software. Many times churches are not typically owed money through things other than through things like donations or pledges or what have you. So that's where donations tracks how pledges or money that's promised to the church that's typically owed is recorded, okay? Accounts receivable in terms of accounting is typically used for situations, as you probably may have seen on the video or the intro video, was, where a church has money that's owed for through something other than giving or pledging through donations. Maybe the church has a number of rental properties that you want to invoice and print statements for people. More commonly, an example of that, and we're going to use that today in our software, is the church has a preschool or a daycare. So you've got a number of parents and families that you need to subsequently send invoices and statements to them. And so accounts receivable in those particular types of situations is perfect. But a very small percentage of our churches have this particular need. Okay, so that in a nutshell is why accounts receivable is not automatically included as part of that. I think it's only an additional, I want to say 99 or 110 bucks or something. Doesn't change your support cost with us. The support remains the same. It's just purchasing the accounts receivable add-on, and you're going to, as we're going to see here momentarily, it does do a lot, and so it may prove to be helpful for your church if you have any of those situations where accounts receivable is really needed or necessary. Okay, so when we go into our chart of accounts, when you enable, I'm not going to go through the enabling of it today. We're already going to have accounts receivable essentially effectively set up. But in a nutshell, when you enable accounts receivable, it adds an asset here. Let me get out my highlighter. Draw some focus. We see a ledger account called accounts receivable / clients right here. Okay, so when we click the plus sign next to that, it does reveal a handful of clients that we already have added. It will simply pop up and say, what 100 number do you want to give to your accounts receivable / clients ledger account? You enter that. Once you've entered that, then you can enter as many clients as you need to the accounts receivable ledger. Okay. So, you know, for folks that are unfamiliar with accounting, you know, and certainly our particular software, you know, typically accounting is an accounts payable system when paying bills. So the accounts receivable, of course, is kind of the opposite of that. So rather than money that's being paid out in the form of accounts payable, receivable is money that's owed back to us. And so it's subsequently set up as an asset account. Okay. In addition to that, when we go down to in our chart of accounts, we would want to set up an income account for that. So right here, we actually have a fund called Tiny Tots Preschool Fund Balance. We've got a preschool tuition income. We've got a preschool grant income. We have essentially set up a fund specifically for our preschool, okay? But notably here, we need the 400 account for preschool tuition because when we enter those invoice transactions, we are recording that money as income to our treasurer's report, even though it is not yet received or it's unrealized. It might be another way to put it, in the sense that we have not received anything that we can physically deposit from our clients yet, but it does hit our treasurer's report pretty much right away. But so once you've gotten the income account, and you don't have to set up a fund for it, folks, you could set up just an income account linked to your current fund for that, or like a general fund or something, but in many cases it might be more beneficial to set up a specific fund for whatever your receivable monies are received for, whether it's a preschool or a daycare or what have you. It's your choice. It just might make it easier to get ahead of that, and so those monies are tracked forward in their own separate fund, in future years automatically. Okay. To add accounts receivable clients, we go up to Manage Accounts, Accounts Plus Minus. Right here, we've got AR clients in the upper left. Let me get up my highlighter again. Right up here, AR clients. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see my quite poorly drawn arrow there. Okay. And then we click on AR clients. We see it opens up. It brings up our ledger account. It says here we want to enter a new client, or we can choose a family or an individual from our membership module if we wish. So if we want, we can just simply click in here. We can type in the name of our new client, and then we can simply click Add Account, and it adds it to our list of accounts receivable clients down here at the bottom left. Once I've clicked on the particular client, we notice over here on the right-hand side, I can enter additional information for my client right up here under the Client tab, okay? So I can do that right here after I've added them to my accounts receivable ledger, okay? Or if we choose not to do that, we can go right back in here into Manage Accounts, click the plus sign next to our accounts receivable clients, find the client account, and go right here to the Client tab in the upper right to enter that information, okay? Okay, so once we're ready to invoice a client, we basically got a family or parent that's wanting to now enroll their child in our preschool. It's going to start by going under Transactions here in the top left, and right here across the top center to Accounts Receivable, and we're going to choose Invoice Accounts Receivable. So then we're going to enter the date occurred. Very similar, folks, to entering and paying bills. We choose the AR client. We can type it in, or we can click the down arrow. Here's our new client. Down here, we can type in our preschool tuition. There's our income account. We can enter the amount of the tuition for the period. I can enter any desired comments if I wish. I simply click on Add to Batch. I can go back up and choose additional clients if I wish. You can set up recurring transactions. Let's enter one more for Allison Jones here. So we'll put in preschool tuition. I just have to type in a few characters. Again, we're going to assume that our tuition is for the same period and for the same amount for all of our students. So again, I would just continue adding invoiced amounts ad nauseum the same way, and only click Post when I'm ready to now post those invoice transactions. Okay, so I simply click Post. He said, clicking Post. Pops up and asks me, do I want to print a list of my invoice transactions? We're going to say no to that. Your choice, of course, folks. No requirement to print those. So I've now recorded those invoice transactions for those two particular clients. If I now wish to print an invoice to send to those folks, I can now go back up to Accounts Receivable and choose Print Invoices. Takes a couple seconds here. Sorry about that. This is not the fastest machine in the world. There we go. So here, notice it automatically reveals the two clients that have outstanding invoices. Okay, so right here I see my Allison Jones for $300 on 7/28 and for my 34 on 7/28 as well. So I can pick one or all of those. Okay, so I can now put a check mark next to the invoices I'm wishing to print. We do have a simple default invoice here with a payment coupon that we create. Not going to get into this in much detail, folks, here today, but notice to the right of our layout, we do have our invoice designer. So if you wish to customize the invoice, and we have a similar function under the statement function under accounts receivable statements, that I can go to the invoice designer and I can do all kinds of things with that. I can manipulate it, I can change it, I can import a logo, you know, pretty much whatever I need or want to do on that, okay? Much like I've got the designer functions and features all over the accounting software, okay? But we're not going to do anything with that. We're going to choose our two simple invoices. We're going to click print. It now reveals, again, just a basic layout of our invoices. Shows the church or organization name. If I want to change that, I can, of course. If I enter an account number for them, it'll show the client name and address if applicable, and it'll show the amount that's due. And in the description, it will put in any comments that I enter in that, okay? I didn't enter a due date. I can. I could go back and enter that if I wish, but now if I go down to page 2, it'll show me my other one for Allison Jones. So I can now physically send this to my printer, stuff those in envelopes, send them off to the client or however I choose to get those to my clients, okay? All right, so let's say we've now sent those, printed those invoices, sent those to those clients. They've now sent me a check or presented me with payments for those. I now need to record those as being collected. I can simply go up to accounts receivable and I can choose collect accounts receivable. So here now I would go up to, you know, I can choose the individual clients. More than likely now, let's say I would go up to quick collect here, and I'm very similar to accounts payable. I would choose the option that I'm wanting. I would say maybe choose view outstanding invoices. So here's my 2 outstanding invoices. And we're going to say that we've received our payment from Allison. So I would put a check mark in the select box. Click create collection. I can do multiple simultaneously, of course. Create collections. So here now I can choose that. I check the date occurred. I choose the bank account where it's being deposited. I would choose the payment method that best suits how they had paid me. Check, cash, EFT, debit card, credit card. Let's say she's written a check to me. I can enter the check or reference number. I don't think that's required, but I can record it if I have it for record-keeping purposes. It will show on their statement when I choose to send their statement to them. Okay, so typically if we're going to record those and you want to provide the client with as much information as possible, we would of course strongly recommend entering as much information, and then I would enter any desired comments, okay? But when I'm ready, I would then simply click post, okay? So I've now recorded both Allison's invoice and subsequent payment. All right, so she's now paid me in full for that current invoice. If I now decide to go up to accounts receivable and print statements, very similar. Again, I've got a simple statement with a statement designer function that allows me to customize that if I wish. So right here I can put it, you know, I can bring it up for any client if I wish. But let's say I now want to print a statement for Allison. I can simply put a check mark in the box next to her name, and I can enter some statement memo items. Thank you, Allison, you know, what have you. Click print, and it now brings up an invoice that shows very similar to a statement that shows very similar to our invoice in that it shows her name, account number if applicable, amount due. She owes me nothing. Her balance is paid in full. Okay, shows me the statement date, all of my transactions. So it shows the invoice number that was created and the payment date. with the check number that she had presented to me and her subsequent payment with her amount due. Okay, so let's look at this a little differently. So let's say I have now gone in and I've received a collected transaction from my remaining client. So then we're going to click here and we're going to do Quick Collect, View Outstanding Invoices, and we're going to assume this client has made a partial payment to us. So we're going to highlight that, choose the select box, click Create Collections. I have some flexibility here in that I can leave the invoices outstanding. So let's say the client has paid me $150 or half of that. I'm going to edit this amount to pay right here to $150. I choose to not mark the invoices paid because I have not received the full balance. So I'm going to uncheck that paid amount and I'm going to re-enter the amount that they're actually paying me. Okay? And then I'm again going to go ahead and we're going to say they're going to have paid me by debit card, and I'm going to click Post. Okay? So let me while we're here, I'm going to choose the Show Running Balance button here. But we notice that if pre-posting of this, current balance is 300, 150 reduction in transaction effect, and the adjusted balance still remains that it shows the balance of 150. Okay? So just to show you that's how that is. I work with folks who prefer to check the invoice and leave the balances outstanding. I'm not that way. So I would click Post. Now, when I come back into Quick, Collect Accounts Receivable and Quick Collect and View Outstanding Invoices, it still shows their 350 amount due, which was the original amount of their invoice, but that shows that their account balance is only $150. So it tells me the whole story right here. So it shows here's how much they owed, here's how much they've paid, and here's what their remaining balance is. So when they decide they're going to give me the remaining balance of that, I can now click Create Collection. It's now marked the invoice as paid, but I'm not receiving $300. So now I'm going to choose and put in the 150, which is the amount that they now owe me. And now I'm going to go ahead and post that. So I'm now using the current collect transaction to clear the invoice and adjusting the collected amount to the amount that they're actually paying to satisfy their balance. Okay? So that's how you would record perhaps a partial payment. Okay? And then a full payment when it's done. Okay? Whoop, payment method, sorry, debit card, meant to do that, click Post. Okay? So that is how we would post perhaps some partially collected payments. I could go back in and record two invoices too. I could correct the one, make it 150, and then post another payment, another invoice for 150. Again, clear the first invoice on the first payment, clear the second one on the second one. Folks, you've got all kinds of flexibility here. Okay? This is your software, your program. You can, we construct it, but we give you as much flexibility as humanly possible to record these transactions in any way that best suits you, depending on what you're wanting on your reports with regards to the outcome, okay? So again, when I now go back into Accounts Receivable, I click Print Statements. I can now put a check mark next to my other remaining client, click Print. Now we notice that we've got the original invoice for 300 and two subsequent payments with, again, a balance due, amount due of 0, okay? Again, lots of flexibility, folks. I'm sorry, we only have 20 minutes to kind of go through this today. But that, again, in the interest of being respectful for your time, we're at our 20 minutes here. I don't want to go any longer than that. So I'm going to end my topic, my discussion of accounts receivable there.